Collapse in Lagos, Nigeria, recently has put the spotlight firmly on the rise of these charismatic churches here in South Africa. It is said that every month, hundreds of people from all parts of South Africa flock to TB Joshua's Synagogue Church of All Nations in the hope of receiving healing treatment. Now, today we are once again joined by Dr. Maria Frahm-Arp from the University of Johannesburg's Department of Religious Studies. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us again today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to start at the beginning because there's such a lot of stuff to detangle. What exactly is a charismatic church in this South African context and what do they offer?
So the charismatic movement in South Africa really started to gain popularity in the 1980s. They're very informed by the kind of Pentecostal, charismatic and evangelical movements of the United States. And in these churches, healing is seen as a way in which God demonstrates his power and is active in people's lives. And people are filled with the Holy Spirit, and this Spirit enables you to perform healings, to predict the future, to drive out demons, to find success in your life. And these churches have been rising ever since the 1980s. One of the key things about the South African churches is that they also offer a whole lot of skills training. And it's not just skills training at a low level like learning how to sew, but skills training about how to perform in the business world, how to carry yourself in a meeting, how to negotiate for a salary increase. And so a lot of these churches are very attractive to people because they offer a whole lifestyle and way to live and be successful in the world.
It seems as if these churches are very much on the rise here in South Africa. If you look around the cities all around the country, it's as if there's a church popping up on every corner almost. Why in South Africa do they have such support and are they gaining such momentum, do you think?
I think it's for two reasons. I think the one reason definitely has to do with what they offer. And they offer help to get a job and help to succeed in your job. But on another level, they offer you the promise that with faith and prayer, God is going to miraculously do good things for you. And for people whose world is unstable, who are struggling to find work, with South Africa's high unemployment rates, people coming from other parts of Africa, migrants, insecure, unsure of a future, these kind of churches offer a place that talks about security and offers you a way to gain a good life.
What's the difference then between this kind of church and a cult?
The cults, by definition, are generally quite closed, so they tend not to tell you what they're about. You tend to have to go through some kind of ritual to join them. And these churches don't have that. You can join at any time, you can go to any of these big churches on any given Sunday, and there is nothing secretive and hidden about these churches.
Are South Africans generally more naive and some even called it gullible than elsewhere on the continent?
Definitely not. These churches are growing at a rapid rate in places like Ghana and Nigeria, actually much faster than South Africa. And I don't know that these people are gullible. I think that might be judging them a bit harshly. They are people who are desperate for hope. And sometimes when you go away for a week and you let go of the stresses of the world, you are able to experience healing.
I want to show you a clip. I did an interview with, one of South Africa's very famous charismatic preachers, Dr. H.Q. Nala, who made headlines last year when he was selling holy water that could supposedly heal HIV/AIDS. And this even led to people stopping their ARV medication. Now, we had him on the show. Let's just take a look at what he had to say. Please explain to us how the faith water that you sell, how this medication works, and how does that water cure HIV and other illnesses?
It is through faith of people who believe, like God spoke to me, he will use anything branded my name. It is according to the person's faith, then the person gets healed.
It really is as simple as that. It doesn't work if you don't believe. Isn't that the ultimate get-out clause for any conman, as it were?
And it's the ultimate get-out clause for any religion. If you don't believe, it's not going to work. So why do people believe? Because for some people it does work, and for other people the idea that there is a greater power is really soothing and healing for them. And then I think there are a third group of people who, as you say, are just desperate for something. And holy water is maybe something that's going to help them.
He now sells holy honey. Apparently the holy honey, you eat it, you put it in your drinks, and it sorts out all your problems. I don't know. I know the faith water was there. There we have. It's 50 Rand for a tube of holy honey. Surely there must come a point. This is, of course, Dr. H.Q. Nala's webpage.
Yeah.
Surely there must come a point where the authorities have to intervene and look at this. You can't be selling faith honey for 50 Rand and telling people if you have faith, anything can happen in your world. How do you, for lack of a better word, police this kind of thing?
Well, is it really up to the government to police this? And then what other things should we be policing? I think what is more frightening here is how people give themselves over to something like this, become disillusioned, and what we don't talk about is how many people leave these churches and actually live lives where they are very depressed because they've spent all this money, they've gone to all these places, they've taken the holy honey, and ultimately what is wrong with them? Because that's how these churches work. The problem is with you and your lack of faith. The problem is not with the leaders and not with God. And is that really what the Christian message is about? Or is it about us working together to support each other in truth and honesty?
Is this the reason why we saw straight after the collapse some of the survivors, they'd gone straight back into TB Joshua's church and blamed Satan for what happened?
Yes, because Satan is the great get out of free jail card. You don't have enough faith and Satan is all powerful. And if you don't pray hard enough, Satan's going to come in and destroy things. So, of course, Satan is the one who destroyed the church, and people have to go back. I mean, if they don't, then everything they've done before is meaningless because it is at that church that they will find the healing. Their broken arm will get healed.
Finally, these men of God, is there a fear factor that they hold over their followers?
Yes, and the Bible tells you to fear God and to fear the people that lead you, and this is fear in a good sense, but I'm not convinced that the fear these people hold over people is a good kind of fear. I think it's a fear that becomes quite manipulative.
Well, it seems to be the case. There's lots of talk of bribery, corruption, and all other things, people being paid for their silence and the like. But thank you for shedding light into this very difficult subject. Dr. Maria Frahm-Arp from the University of Johannesburg's Department of Religious Studies. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, the number of people who've died following the collapse of that Nigerian church building has risen to 115 now. The number of South African victims remains at 84. 25 survivors arrived back in the country yesterday.
Finally back on home soil after a harrowing ordeal. Scores of journalists, emergency services and medical staff awaited the plane's arrival, delayed for several hours. The biggest post-94 evacuation operation. Among the survivors, orphans. 18-month and 4-year-old siblings lost both their parents when the guest house at the Synagogue Church of All Nations collapsed on September 12th. They were placed in the care of social workers. The focus now shifts to the repatriation of the 84 deceased, and again, warnings that it could be a long wait.
That process will be dependent on the pace in which the assessment team is proceeding in Lagos, in particular the DNA that is being conducted as we speak, so that we are sure that all those that will be repatriating are South African citizens.
We are actually conducting forensics on all the people. There are about 115 bodies. Out of them, then we have our 84. And then, but now from there now confirm our people, because we have taken the DNA samples from the family members who were here, and we'll take the DNA samples from the other family members in South Africa.
Calling it a national disaster, Pretoria says it's keenly awaiting the outcome of the Nigerian government's investigation. Offences Timo, SABC News, Pretoria.
Now, children have been left orphan, people have been maimed and will never be able to work again. Others have suffered the loss of family breadwinners. What happens now? While TB Joshua's church continues blaming the building collapse on sabotage, the victims now have to move on with their lives. Do they have any legal rights, any steps they can take against the church following this tragic accident? Well, this morning we're joined by legal expert and Director of Litigation at Worksman's Attorneys, Bernard Hotz. Good morning, Bernard. Thank you for joining us again.
Morning, Evan. Thanks for inviting me.
If one of your family members died or were maimed in this tragedy, what kind of recourse or what kind of route would you take?
Evan, the first thing that we've got to look at is, unfortunately, in Nigeria, over the last couple of years, we've seen a number of building collapses. I think the stats said there were over 30 building collapses in the last 10 years. And the Nigerian building authorities in Lagos have actually come up with ordinances, statutes, that they are applying to try and curb the defective building, the structural integrity issues that are plaguing the building industry there. The first thing that has to happen, as we've seen, is that the authorities have gone in and they've marked this building with an X. What is that X? That X is to determine whether or not there were structural defects.
Yeah.
So now you look at what the situation is. You've got a building and they were constructing 2 floors above it. You have to have a permit to do that. So there has to be all types of investigations to see were there the appropriate permits in place? Was the construction handled appropriately? The answer to that is going to determine what happens from a legal context. Because now we're dealing with people who attended a church and were injured, killed. You've got dependents who now want to seek legal redress. We talk about in delict, taught in Nigeria, the duty of care. Who owed them a duty of care?
Yeah.
Who can they sue? And now there's another complexity. Complexity is that the victims, the South Africans, are based in South Africa. Where do they litigate? They have to litigate in Nigeria. So they're a foreigner in the jurisdiction in Nigeria. That has its own complexities. Do they have to provide security for costs because they're now litigating in a foreign court? Do we have the option of class actions? Nigeria does recognize class actions. The last class action that I read about took 10 years to finalize. So unfortunately, we're looking at a situation where to say at this moment, who can you sue? Can you sue? I think it's a little bit premature.
How do you see a process like this proceed then, when we talk liability, when we talk jurisdiction?
Well, assuming that the investigation determines that the church management may have been at fault because they didn't secure the appropriate approvals. The other complexity that one has to look at is the failure to secure the appropriate approvals. Was that the cause of the actual collapse? So that's another complexity. You may have failed to obtain an approval from a government organization, but that may not have been the cause. But let's assume for a moment that that does stack up, that was the cause, and that in law they had a duty of care towards the victims, and now you want to seek legal redress. You have to seek legal redress in the Nigerian court. You have to be the plaintiff, and you have to sue them in what we call delict or tort in Nigeria to say that they breached their duty of care.
What kind of landmark cases are you aware of, if any, that litigators in this case would be able to draw from?
Even it's one's looking at a situation where you are claiming loss, damages, What is that loss? You've got different categories. You've got people who may have been injured. They're therefore claiming medical damage, medical expenses. They're claiming pain and suffering.
Yeah.
You may be looking at dependents, children who, as you said, have been orphaned, and they're claiming loss of support. So I think one's going to see a wide range of cases. The thing that troubles me is that litigation is, at the best of times, expensive. It's a long process, and you're looking at individual litigants having to litigate in a foreign country, which is not an easy thing to do.
Now, there are a lot of families today that are in turmoil and in crisis because of this tragedy. What would your advice be to those family members who have suffered loss going forward? What would be the best course of action that you could advise them to take?
I think it would be appropriate to group. I call it a group. Some people may call it a class. We're talking about class action. Yeah. And I think it's important for people to group together and obtain the right advice to try and see how they best can assert their legal remedies. There are legal remedies to assert, and I think it would be easier, not necessarily legally easier, but easier practically to assert your rights as a class.
Would we have attorneys or lawyers in South Africa that would take a case like this on, and why?
Even one mustn't forget that we're litigating on foreign soil. So the law is different. For instance, the Nigeria is based mainly on English law. So it would be appropriate to utilize the services of lawyers in Nigeria, and I've little doubt that there would be lawyers in Nigeria who would be sympathetic to this type of cause.
Well, Bernard, thank you very much for joining us and giving us a little bit of an inside view as to what recourse the victims and the families in this tragedy have. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
That's Bernard Hotz, who is the legal expert and head of business crimes unit at Worksman's Attorneys here in Johannesburg. Time for us now to take a look at